Excellent, everyone. Welcome to Talks with Travis tonight, and we are going to be working through flat and clipless pedals in regards to coaching. And my main goal tonight is just to kind of highlight some of the differences in regards to efficiency, skill development, and when using either flat or clipless pedals. We'll do like a quick review of the different systems out there, but I'm really interested in hearing your guys' questions and your guys' thoughts around these, or, around the differences and what we do in our personal time. And I do want to acknowledge that there are a lot of strong opinions about flat or clipless pedals. And we're just going to approach this from like a open-minded and like judgment-free perspective, because we're eventually, likely to work with someone who is on clipless pedals or won't go to flats or, and so we want to be able to still get them the experience that they want in their coach or from their coaching session with you. And, Allison is working with racers and that sort of thing too. And, they're going to be in clipless pedals. So there's going to be some specific things that we want to pay attention to. So y'all ready to jump in?
Let's jump in.
All right, sweet. So yeah, kind of starting out with like what the biggest differences between the two systems are, right? Flat pedals allow us to get our feet off of the pedals a lot easier and also allow us to hone a lot of technical uh or a lot of, techniques, and can have us create a better connection with our mountain bike through our moves instead of mechanical advantage. And clipless pedals will definitely allow us to get more power, maybe tackle some more challenging features like uphill ledges a little bit easier, and can, make us a little bit more efficient while we're riding. And I'm curious, so I primarily ride flat pedals in my personal riding, unless I'm on like, the gravel bike or whatever. I'm curious in your guys' personal riding, what you prefer to ride in.
Yeah, I'll start. I would change back and forth back in the early 2000s, but once I started coaching more, it was just easier just to go to flats full time, and I can't really say I've missed being clipped in.
Uh-huh. Some of the climbs around here have definitely got me wishing I had some clipless pedals at times, especially on the ride we did yesterday. But okay, so primarily flats. Awesome. Cam, do you normally ride flats on the mountain bike or gravel? Or sorry, or clipless?
So I do a mixture. When I'm teaching, I've been using a new pedal system that Hustle Labs came out with. They have a magnetic retention system.
Okay.
It's been really neat because it has it's a flat pedal with the magnetic cleat, if you would call that,
Sure.
and plus it has pegs on the flats. And so I try to stay with a flat system because most of my students ride flats.
Totally. Yeah.
So, but I've been totally digging this pedal system by Hustle Labs. It's been really good, really good.
And does that allow you with like a little bit of ankle positioning to like really pull up on the back end, or is it more for like when you're going through chunky? Okay, sweet.
Yeah, no, it can. You can adjust the level of retention based on the number of pegs on the pedal itself, and it's all aluminum. The pedal body is, and it's a standard M6 little peg. So it's been pretty neat. I've really enjoyed using it.
And do you have to have like specific shoes to pair with that, or does it?
No, the magnetic cleat that it comes with is pretty wide because it has two magnetic surfaces on the pedal body itself. And so I've been running the Rascal Ions, right? Or is it the Ion Rascals? I think it's the Ion Rascals. And as long as you have a 2-hole cleat shoe, it should work just fine because it's not any wider than an SPD pedal or SPD cleat.
Okay, got it. So those are like, just so everyone, because I had a hard time, I wasn't familiar with that shoe, but so I did a quick Google search, and it looks like it's like a, kind of standard mountain bike, like looks like a flat shoe, but can accept a cleat. So it's got that recessed spot. Okay, got it. Awesome.
Correct. Yep.
And okay, cool. That is definitely really interesting. And what?
He's frozen for me.
Ditto.
Okay.
I think we lost you for a minute.
Mid sentence. That the suspense is killing me.
Let me grab my phone and text him
Okay.
if he hasn't figured it out. Oh, there you
Did
go.
I freeze there for a second? I
Yep.
thought I
Yeah.
heard it.
You kind of froze like
right.
this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm gonna try to switch. All right, am I back?
You're
Mhm.
back.
All right, sweet. Okay, thank you for. I hadn't played around with those pedals. That's interesting. I'll have to take a peek at those, Cam.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
So
Hustle
yeah,
Labs.
and Hustle Labs. Okay, I'll have to
Mhm.
check it out. Awesome. And Allison, Clipless, working with Nika. Or are you on flats as well?
Well, so my whole mountain biking career up until I started coaching NICA about 3 years ago, I rode Clipless. So it's for sure what I'm most comfortable on, but
Mhm.
I'm getting used to flats. I
Sure,
ride
and-
flats anytime I'm riding with the kids or anytime I'm coaching at all. So
Yeah, but in your person, okay, that's cool. And I think that that's important to acknowledge. Like getting on, like getting comfortable with flat pedals is a process, right? Like it's not,
for sure.
just like a step on it and everything's good to go sort of thing. And I think that's something we do need to acknowledge. I am going to turn my video off just to take a little bit less bandwidth there. And if y'all don't mind doing the same, just so we can try to keep the talking points as clear as possible. All right, cool. And John, are you primarily on flats?
I'm almost exclusively on flats. I've only started riding maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and so I never road biked beforehand or anything like that. So I've been a flat pedal guy from day one. I recently added clips to my gravel bike, and I'm perfectly fine staying that way. So I kind of like my flats on my mountain bike and my clips on my gravel bike.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think one so kind of the big I'm glad that we have like a little bit of a mix, because I think everyone interacts with riding differently and they're gonna adjust their gear accordingly, right? So just I don't want to like go through the too in depth on the stuff that I'm sure y'all are very familiar with. But right, like a flat pedal is best to have metal pegs, whether that's a plastic body or a metal body or aluminum, like Cam was talking about. And then that pairs best with a like specific mountain bike shoe. And that's going to be a little bit softer rubber compound, a flat sole. And so even just having like flats on their own can allow for skill development. But if those riders are riding in, like beefy trail running shoes or, something along those lines that have a lot of curve and a lot of, nubs on the bottom that may impact how the pegs dig in, that can also be a challenge for flat pedal riders. And then our clipless pedals are, the ones that we have that cleat on the bottom and recessed for mountain biking, and you get out by just simply, tweaking your heel to the outside. And so usually what I like to think about is like, how do we determine what's best for our participants, right? Because I think it's pretty well understood that we improve our technical riding better on flat pedals because we're forced to do these, maneuvers with our ankles and our pedal positioning to create a stronger connection with the bike, opposed to relying on those cleats. So what questions would we ask our participants if they start talking about moving to clipless pedals? I'll kind of start out. Is it are they looking to be faster or have more power on the climbs? Is kind of like one thing that I really want to look for, or really want to ask them, because there is definitely there is definitely a mentality sometimes that as you get better at mountain biking, you switch to clipless pedals. Like I think that is starting to change. But when I got into mountain biking, that was like, it's just what you did. So yeah, the first 5 years of my mountain biking was exclusively on clipless pedals. And Cam did just send the shoes that he's been using for his pedal combo. So if you want to take a peek at that, it's in the chat. But what other types of things would we want to ask our participants, or how would we respond to questions about moving to clipless pedals with our participants? What do y'all think?
I always encourage them to explore both. I don't I don't approach it as one's better than the other. You know, they both have their pros and cons.
Hmm.
Um, I would say probably over 95% of my participants show up in flats. So I think you're right, Travis, that trend is shifting, especially for newer riders. I think they appreciate the security of being able to get off anytime they want.
Hmm.
I don't think I've ever had a clipless rider or a flat rider ask about moving to cleats. It's usually the opposite. It's usually the cleated rider showing up and wondering if they should go to flats.
And what have the rest of you guys experienced? I mean, yeah, yeah, sorry, what have the rest of you guys experienced? Okay, no worries. Um,
Oh,
yeah, I
sorry,
mean,
Travis. I was trying to get unmuted there.
oh, all
Um,
good, all
yeah,
good.
sorry. I got a new computer and I'm learning it. But most of the time when I've been coaching, it's been in a clinic format, and the people who the directors, usually Kate and Danielle, have set it up by saying, we want you in flats.
Mhm.
And that has been, usually we'll have one or two people who have often some cross country racing in their background, or some, something along those lines, and there's just this very uncomfortable feeling for them, and trying to explain to them that they're going to, walk through the steps to them to kind of reposition their feet and get as close to that feeling as they can, and things like that has been a challenge, and usually is a big part of the day.
Mhm. And what are some of the things that we can do to get riders from, okay, so let's touch on this, previously riding clipless and moving to flats. What things do we do, coach our riders to do to get more confident on those flat pedals? What are some of the things that come to mind for you? And that's to everybody, not just John.
I think for me, like personally,
Mhm.
was like figuring out that my feet are going to be in a different place on the pedals. And once I kind of figured that out, it made all the difference. Like knowing that my foot's a little more forward on the pedal than it is when I'm clipped in.
Mhm.
Um, and then like just thinking about my feet more when I ride. Like because you have to think about your feet more and like the position and stuff. That's kind of, those are the two things that like really got me from feeling like, oh crap, my feet are going to fly off all the time, to, oh, this isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be.
Totally. And yeah, I think foot position is huge. I remember the first time I put my clipless pedals back on my mountain bike for a big ride and grabbed my shoes, the where my cleats were mounted were in a totally different position from where I, typically ride with flat pedals, and it was a huge adjustment. Um, and I think that for me, I mean, I was looking at how my cleats are positioned on my gravel shoes, and often there's like enough adjustment in clipless systems that you can get it, pretty close to right under the ball of the foot. And that's maybe one adjustment that or that's one adjustment that I've made when I've done like private coaching with or riders who have had clipless pedals, is even though like, with clipless pedals, and the cleat a little bit further under the toe, you can do that and be secure on the pedals, but you might not be as stable as if that cleat was still under the ball of your foot. So that's one thing that I've tried to like work with clipless riders on, is still like trying to get that really good foot position that Allison was talking about with those cleated, or with those clipless pedals. Um, and then Allison also mentioned the positioning of or the movement of the feet and paying attention to your feet, and that to me is bringing up the foot wedge, right? And I think it's important, when our the foot wedge is not just beneficial for flat pedals, it does help us, hold on to that bike a lot better, but even on clipless pedals, that can keep us a lot more or positioned in the center of the bike appropriately. So I think a lot of the skills that are required of flat pedals are also still super beneficial to clipless riders, but it's just a matter of showing why that's necessary. Because oftentimes, cleats will hold on to feet quite well, and they may not feel the necessity for those things until they experience it. And I guess like the point that I want to get across with that is if we do end up coaching clipless riders, still pay just like really close attention to, yeah, specifically ankle positioning, like what Allison brought up. I think that's a huge thing, because we can still coach to those things that we would on flat pedals, even if they're attached. Does anybody have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've got a couple thoughts. So prior to me switching over to flats exclusively, I dug into, and this was years ago, so I can't pull up any references for you guys, but I would encourage you to do your own digging. I was always curious where that sort of unwritten rule came from about, hey, you have to have gotta have your pedal axle going right through the ball of your foot. And if I remember right, it came from the running world from years and years and years and years and years ago, when cleated rider, or cleats, clipless, started to become a thing. And the question was, where should we put our cleats? And it came from that running world of being able to propel off the ball of your foot for that stride. And if you go do digging, and I'm by no means an expert on this. I'm not a bike fitter, so I'm just saying this is what I found. If you go digging, you find that a lot of people have kind of thrown that advice away. And prior to me switching to flats exclusively, I went, I wonder what that feels like. So I took my cleats and shoved my shoe as far forward on the cleats, so to kind of mimic what we would be riding with flats. And I rode that way for a couple of years in my cleats before I went to flats, and I didn't really notice any difference. I didn't get any knee pain or anything like that. So I would encourage you guys to not take that advice unless you know any different than I do, and dig a little bit and see what you come up with. That you might be surprised what you find.
And so, yeah, Scott, you're saying that it is different to have, or it's like not necessarily a bad thing to have the middle of the pedal more close to your toes. That was a clarifying question.
Yeah, so just listening to the discussion talking about, you know, cleated riders are used to having the ball of their foot or the pedal axle or the pedal spindle, right?
Mhm.
And then transitioning to flats, and where flat riders tend to ride with their foot a little farther forward on the pedal. So going back to the cleated setup, and I think just asking the question, well, why do cleated riders want the ball of their foot? What, just because they're cleated, why wouldn't their foot be farther forward like a flat rider? And that's where I kind of started digging, and
Totally.
started to realize that, oh, maybe this is just one of those things that, well, that's just what we've always done, and it kind of got passed down, over the years. Kind of the same thing with having your saddle placement, having, with your forward foot, if you drop a plumb bob from the front of your kneecap, it should go through the pedal axle. If you dig enough, you'll find some interesting research on that as well. And
Mhm.
again, I'm not a bike fitter, but I think because mountain biking is so dynamic, I wonder if some of that bike fitting stuff, how much of it really applies, because we're not just in the saddle cranking out miles and miles and miles.
Mhm.
We're up, we're down, we're left, we're right, all that kind of movement.
For sure. And I guess I've found that like a lot of clipless setups, the cleat tends to be more under the toes than, or yeah, like I guess yeah, so I guess that's what I've noticed. And I was talking with Mike Holm, who's another instructor trainer, and I think it involves like which muscle groups are being activated the most. But yeah, it is interesting. I don't have like scientific data. I just know I kind of think about like how I feel or like how my feet feel. And in the position that I've previously had cleats and how I used to ride, I felt a lot less stable when I went back to that same position. Um, but yeah, and I just want to go to the chat real quick. Hostiles Adventures, welcome to the talk. Excited to have you here. Um, where you joining the call from?
From Philadelphia area, PA.
Sweet, awesome. I'll be in Pennsylvania in mid-March, which I'm looking forward to. Excellent. But yeah, so you brought up a point about it's nearly impossible to get kids to move back to flats to focus on technique. And and touching on the like the perception that flats are for beginners. I do. Yeah, I think that maybe that perception is changing a little bit, but kids are tough. And I wonder if there's some skills that you'd be able to encourage them to do, like that would be, or like more challenging skills that would be a little too nerve-wracking to do on clipless, and then try to get them to do that on flats, because then that'd be still like exciting a little bit, right? I'm thinking about a skinny on flats instead of on clipless pedals. That would, maybe tempting the try these harder things on flat pedals to improve your riding. That's probably what I would try, but it is tough with race teams that are so focused on that speed. Does anyone have any suggestions for how to convince kids to jump back on flat pedals?
I've had a couple adults say, if we're doing something like a level lift, they'll say, "Oh no, I can do the level lift just fine," and then you see them demo it, and they're clearly just yanking up on the pedals, and I'll say, "Well, you're not preloading your bike, so you're kind of missing out on some of the effort there, or missing out on some of the energy you're getting out of the system, the suspension system, by not stomping down first." And so depending on the rider and maybe the shoe and cleat combination, I might have them unclip and try it again. Again, not depending on the shoe and the cleats. If they have like a full carbon shoe, I won't do that, because they'll probably slip and hurt themselves. But I'll demo it myself, showing that, hey, even in flats, I can still clearly keep my feet attached to the pedals. And then I might get that discussion of, well, but I'm clipped in, so I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do this preload, this stomp movement to keep my feet on the pedals. And then I'll explain to him, well, but in more advanced skills, you still need that stomp, and something like jumping, when you're stomping into the face of the jump, you still want to do that regardless of whether you're in flats or cleated. So it's not that they can get away with it because they're already clipped in, and so they don't have to do the whole movement. It's such a fundamental skill that applies across such a broad range of skills. So sometimes I'll have that conversation with them and maybe open up their eyes to a little bit bigger window, that it's not just this one skill we're working on. It could be ingraining this movement that'll help them in so many other different skills.
Yeah, and I think it's tough to let's see. Honestly, I would probably, okay, so let's see. I would probably show them a trials clip and be like, these guys aren't clipped in. You want to try this sort of thing? Because that would definitely get me to change my riding. And I think Cam, well, we'll go to that in just a sec here. But and sorry, Hostile Adventures, what was your first name? I didn't catch that earlier. Okay, maybe they stepped away for a second. That's all good.
Sorry, apologies on that. I hit the button the wrong way. Its first name's Jeff. Travis, did you work at Arrowhead Bike Farm?
I did.
Yeah, we've met. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked about that offline. Yeah, we've met. Yeah, you're awesome dude. So you got me convinced to actually do more coaching and get my daughter to get coached more. So applauds to you. You've really changed our whole way of riding, and we listen to a whole lot of different people because of you, and I'm deeply appreciative. So yeah.
Jeff, that's awesome. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I did leave the bike farm last May, and now I'm full time with the BICP. But no, that's great. I'll be back there this May to do some courses. But oh, that's hilarious. It is such a small world, for sure.
The thing with that I have been able to work with my daughter on is like, and I forget the gentleman that was talking about this before, but if we're working on skills, there's much more of an appetite to work on skills on flats. If we're there to crank on cross country, to get over the roots and to get time, then it's like, okay, this isn't about skills training. This is about, racing. And I'm trying to work with her about, okay, fine, we can get to that, but let's spend a lot of time on our skills and then take those skills like wedging and then apply it when you're on your cleats and racing.
Mhm.
That's the way I've been successful to even get her to listen.
Yeah, I like that, and it sounds like it's like a reframing of what's happening. So I mean, like in a skill clinics context, it sounds like they're down for it because that's when they're learning. I wonder if if you're working with a group of kids, if you had like a skills clinic ride, and then that would get them actually out on the trails and like getting in a feeling that cadence and everything out on the trail, as well as just like in the field, in the cone zone sort of thing. Because it sounds like when framed in a way that they accept, it's like good, and they're able to improve their riding at those times. So maybe instead of having all trail time be just putting on miles, have like a couple of like sessioning days, or like like a skills ride instead of a timed ride or whatever.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, because I'm just trying, because it's a pretty common thing. I mean, I've definitely worked with participants in Minnesota and in West Virginia that have wanted to, they ride clipless pedals regularly, and it's tough to make that transition. But I like that you brought up, reframing it and to get them to try out some new stuff. I think it can be hard to get people into that mentality of, hey, I'm going to learn right now, especially when if they're racing they're probably pretty dang solid riders. So yeah, I like that point. Thank you, Jeff.
Sure.
Cool. Looking over my notes. Okay, so I just want to talk about, and we've touched on a lot of points. And I think Scott was touching on this as well. Like once we're moving into more advanced skills, our ankle movement becomes important, not just to keep our feet on the pedals, but also to but also to move the bike in the way that we want to. And so I'm sorry, I'm also just like checking off my notes that I wanted to make sure we touched on. Okay. And if any questions pop up, or if y'all have things that have been on your mind about this, feel free to throw that in there. Throw it. Okay. So I want to touch on the idea of, all right, we've got a rider who is going to come to the clinic in clipless pedals, even though our, email said flats required or highly recommended. One thing that I think we could do to still work with that rider is to, especially if it's like for a guided ride or something along those lines, make some sort of a getting out of the pedals as part of the assessment. Because what I found is there's times when we're trying to coach a skill to a rider that has clipless pedals, but they're reluctant to attempt the skill because they're afraid they can't get out. And that still may not be enough to get them, riding on flat pedals and all that. But I think that is, a way that we can help to manage risk, because building technique is a big part of riding flats, but also it's a great risk management tool for us instructors, right? Because we don't it's a very easily preventable, near miss or minor type of incident when we're coaching.
That's a really good point, Travis. I don't think I've ever thought of it in that context from a risk point of view. I've always just assumed if they're going to show up in a cleated setup, that they're comfortable with being able to get out of them. Interesting enough, I've also seen it the other way, where the rider in the clinic information, I'll say that they're that something along the lines of they're highly recommended, and so I'll have a rider take that to heart and show up that's their very first time that they've been in flats. And sometimes that experience is so foreign to them that it overshadows everything they're trying to learn in the clinic, and they're so distracted by it. So I wonder sometimes that for that particular student, it might have been better for them to show up in their cleated shoes and just do the clinic as is, and then have that conversation with them and see if they're interested in exploring being on flats. But in my skill description, or the clinic description, I'll basically qualify it at the end saying, whatever you're most comfortable with. If you're interested in trying flats, I've got some extra flat pedals I can bring, but ultimately I'm not going to mandate it if it's really what you're most comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is tough because we don't want to move them too far out of that comfort zone to prevent learning of other skills. Let's see. But yeah, I think having a spare set of flats is a good call, just in case. And it's tough too, because I've had clinics where riders have shown up with their stiff clipless shoe that maybe has some rubber on the bottom and then flat pedals. And that's almost like another challenge into itself. And it makes me think, like, the same question that you just had, Scott. Is it better for them to actually just be on clipless pedals instead of the combination that is not going to work super well?
Yeah, I've had a few of those as well, and they were, they borrowed some pedals, some flat pedals, or just bought them, but didn't understand that their shoes weren't going to work with them. And I was lucky in those times, they still brought their cleated pedals. And I said, no, let's put those back on. You're going to be worse off.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Okay, so I want to bring it back to, I want to bring it back to, like, why we coach on flat pedals, right? Better technique development, all of that. And okay, so I have had conversations with riders that with clipless pedals, they're able to do moves that require, mostly it's in like climbing contexts, right? They're able to do moves that require more power, which can make it okay. I guess, like, the question I want to ask is, how do we get riders to keep flat pedals on for more than just the clinic? Is there like are the people that you're working with regular enough that you could have some sort of like check-in system? Or I'm imagining with like NICA kids and that sort of thing, like, okay, do 7 rides on your clipless pedals and you can get, you don't have to ride the last 3 miles of our practice today, or something like that. Like, I'm trying to think of some sort of way that we can help to incentivize these like fast racer, clipless pedal types to try out those flat pedals and really hone that technique, and then bring it back to clipless pedals after. Do y'all have any ideas on that? Okay. And a lot of times, like, a lot of the folks that I've worked with, it's been here or there, it hasn't been always a very, very consistent thing, but
I have a question.
yeah.
So I guess with the rosters that that maybe you or anybody else in this chat maintain? Is there a follow-up that y'all do, or a like a communication piece that happens after the class to help, I guess, bridge that gap or to make that connection happen? Or is it just kind of like a one and done, like they come to your clinics and then that's the last time you see them unless you maybe connect on social media somewhere?
I mean, I think it's an awesome question. I think that's like it's a good practice for sure. Like, especially with the bigger programs that we would run at the bike farm, we would send out surveys and that sort of thing afterwards. And you can start to compile a, email list of of participants that you've worked with before, just to kind of like, hey, I remember we were working on front wheel lifts. If you want to keep going with some rear wheel lifts after that, like give me a holler. I think saving that your customer information for later times would be good. And I know that some folks will distribute, if they've talked about like bike maintenance or suspension or anything like that, they'll email that information to them in the after the clinic. uh Scott, what do you typically do?
I admittedly am not good at following up after clinics. About the only follow-up I do is I send out a set of notes to give them a kind of a list of almost like cliff notes of what we covered, because I do cover a ton of stuff in my clinics. So there's some follow-up there, and it gives me an opportunity to ask for feedback and say, hey, here's the schedule of the rest of my clinics. And if there's anything else we talked about in the clinic itself that was unique to that group, maybe a link to a video or a partnership with some other bike shop or service or something, I'll throw that in there. But after that, I don't follow up with them. Sometimes I'll get feedback from that email that I send out afterwards. Sometimes I'll get some. The thing I love most is when people send me an email back saying, hey, it might be a couple of weeks later, and saying, hey, I was practicing these skills that you had us work on, and now I'm doing this thing so much better, whatever it is, cornering, or I got up this trail that I could not get up before. And I love to hear that stuff, but I don't get that very often. But I think it might be because of the crowd that I'm marketing to. Travis, as you know, I used meetup.com for all my clinics, and it just sort of happened organically. It wasn't like I went out seeking it. And I've started to notice that crowd seems to be the folks that aren't super active on social media. And so it's just kind of it's interesting. It's kind of a different collection of folks compared to if I was advertising all over social media, which sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. So I wonder if that's why I don't get a lot of follow-up back from them after my email they send out after the clinic, just because it's kind of like a different crowd.
It is interesting how, yeah, social media will allow you to, stay in touch with riders after the fact and kind of keep an eye on their riding, if they're posting regularly and stuff. And we did do a talk on social media management, which was really good with Joanna Yates. So you can definitely jump back and listen to that one too. But I am curious, Allison, how NICA manages the progress of their riders. And how is there like a tracking system for that?
Not necessarily. I mean, we have, like our race season or whatever. So, I mean, that kind of automatically tracks how they're doing, because it tracks where they're finishing in the races, compared to the other riders. And it's highly dependent on the teams too, because, different teams are run by different coaches, and there is some similarity as far as like how we teach stuff, but like how they run their teams is kind of up to them. So I know some teams like have forms that they like, skill progression forms that they kind of keep for all their riders, so they can kind of track that. And then other teams are just like, hey, you did great today.
Sure.
So it's a pretty wide range
Mhm.
of tracking when it comes for the NICA kids for sure. Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, Cam, I guess like did that conversation kind of like help with your question?
Yeah, it does. I or did. I just trying to process it in my like I guess in context of the students that I teach. I mean, I pseudo maintain an email distribution list, but then I guess I like Scott. I don't really follow through too much. Um, and my scenario is a little bit different just because of the my students are all adult comps that some
Mhm.
have biking experience, some don't, and so anyway, I'm just trying to brainstorm of ways to um I guess to maintain those connections over time
Yeah.
to
I
see
would
to see if they are progressing in the skills that we first taught them, so
I wonder if organizing like, and this would take a little bit of time on your own as well, but like just organizing like hey, here's all of my, alumni of my classes. Like, let's get together for a group ride or something, just to kind of
sure.
bring everyone back together. That might be kind of a fun thing, as well. But yeah,
Oh
I
yeah.
think, yeah, email and um social media would probably be the best ways to stay in touch, but it is tough because yeah, you're working with a very niche group of people for sure.
Yeah, and I did like Scott's I guess your cliff notes. That was a great idea. I think I might start doing that.
Cool.
Yeah, I will say, if you're gonna take that route, make up a set of notes and send them to Nicole and have her look it over, because we want to keep it general enough to where we're not, releasing too much intellectual property of the BICP teaching methods and things like that.
Sure.
That was something I never thought about, and then it was brought up in one of our IT conferences, or the IT conference last year. And I sent her a copy of what I send out, and she said, "Yeah, that's okay." So yeah, just be
Gotcha. That's a good point.
conscious of that.
Thank you, Scott. Awesome. Well, we've gotten a little off I love this, like, because I want to just get all your guys' questions answered as much as possible. But does anyone have any last thoughts on flat and clipless pedals? I mean, we touched on a lot of stuff, from convincing people to ride flats, to uh or yeah, to like the technique that's affected, very so much in the ankle positioning that we need to pay really close attention to when we're coaching. And we talked about some strategies for teaching with riders that still are clipped in. But yeah, any additional thoughts on this topic?
I like to bring up the off the bike benefits of being in flats. If you're on a trail that maybe is technical, where you might have to dab a lot, and it's sandstone, which doesn't jive really well with a steel cleat. Having flats makes it real easy and much safer to be walking around, especially a place like Sedona, where it's almost all slick rock or sandstone. Or on really super long rides. I've been on rides with friends who were in cleated shoes, and I was in my flats, and at the end they can't wait to get their feet out. And I'm thinking, yeah, mine just kind of feel like nice tennis shoes.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of another benefit I like to think about when I'm in flats, that if I do have to walk around off the bike, I don't feel like I'm skating around like a clown on a skating rink, on an ice rink.
Nice. Yeah, those I didn't even think about those, but those are huge, right? Just like overall comfort on the bike. And yeah, I think that when recommending a setup for our participants, that's definitely a big factor. Like, are you looking to finish this ride in a powerful, aggressive way, or are you looking to just get out, enjoy the day, that sort of thing. And I feel like that get out, enjoy the day, and try some techie stuff does fit well with a lot of flat pedal riders for sure. That's how I identify, is like just get out and enjoy the day sort of riding. But there are a lot of really intense riders on flats for sure. Awesome. Well, I appreciate everyone coming together tonight and talking about flats and clipless pedals. I love that this is something that we can spend just about an hour talking about. And if you do have any other questions or anything, feel free to send me an email. But we hit all the bullet points that I was hoping to tonight. Is everyone feeling good?
Feeling good.
Yep.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, so next week we will be talking about seasonal prep to do to get ready for your clinics. I know that some places like Arizona, it's already ramping up, and maybe in North Texas as well. But I think a lot of folks are moving into that prime season. So it's just a kind of checklist of all the things that we want to do to be super, super ready for the upcoming season of clinics. So 6 p.m. Mountain Time is when it'll be next week, and I hope to see y'all there.
Thanks, Travis.
Yep,
Thanks,
no
Travis.
problem.
Have a good night.
Y'all have a
Yeah,
good
thanks for
night.
hosting this, man.
Yeah, good to see you again, Jeff. Good to see you, Cam, Allison. It was great to meet you. And Scott, I'm looking forward to riding tomorrow.
Cheers.
See ya.
Sounds good.
Good
See ya.
night.